Hey, hi, hello, my friends. It is springtime. I'm not sure when summer starts. I always thought summer started earlier than it did when I was younger because when it's kind of cold in January, February, March, and then April comes and it's warm, I'm like, okay, it's summer, no more school, no more responsibilities. And I wish that were the case when I became an adult, but it's not because, in fact, today I had a huge adulting responsible thing I had to do, which was go to the prefecture, which is the police station here in Paris. Did I go to the wrong one first? Yeah, absolutely, because I wasn't given clear instructions on which one to go to. In the convocation that they send you, they just say go to the prefecture. Great, that's French bureaucracy for you. So I went to the wrong one. But today was the day that I went to go pick up my new visa or my residency permit now that I've been here for a few years. And it was quite stressful because I could have gotten a visa anywhere from 6 months to 4 years. And the thing with living across the world is that you're at the mercy of what the government decides to let you do there. And I stressed out a lot about this situation, as most people do, for many months because I started my business here last year and I've been a freelancer. I was on an entrepreneur visa, and when you go to apply for a different one, you have to give them all of your paperwork, all of your taxes, all of the adult things that no creative really likes to do. And I was really afraid that I did things incorrectly. Being raised in a very responsible household. My dad was in the military and grew up very structured, and so my brother and I did too, and I was always afraid to make a mistake or not follow the correct rules when it comes to authority. So moving across the world to a country where their bureaucracy and their paperwork are quite excessive and also not in my native language, I was really stressed out about this situation. I also had to go through the entire process of like a language test and cultural classes to learn about their government and the country's history and their school system. And anyway, so because I passed my A1 French and I guessed it all the paperwork right, I got a 4-year visa or a residency permit to stay here in France for the next 4 years. And I'm doing a podcast today because it's a little ironic. I came to France 3 years ago, this May, and so much in my life has changed in this short period of time. And I think just being in your 20s are small increments of extreme change. If you choose it, at least, you can lose friends and gain friends and move places and try new things and be scared and be brave all at the same time. And I have noticed now that I'm 29 that all the living that I have done in the past 10 years is starting to catch up to me, not in a way that I'm disappointed or regretful at all, but I'm starting to be a little tired physically and emotionally. And it's ironic that this podcast is called Cageless, but I am starting to ache, I think like a lot of people who are approaching their 30s, for some homeness and some stability. And so part of me was relieved to find that the date on my visa is 2029 now. But then there's also part of me that wonders, is this my permanent home? And none of us can really know where our permanent home is, but I think that you get to choose the places that you don't run away from. And living here has been magical and terrifying and difficult and eye-opening and changed me in ways that I love and changed me in ways that I don't love. And so now that I can breathe a little bit for the next 4 years, because all of my other visas were 1 year, and that kind of paperwork and dedication takes most of the year to come in order to apply for the next year. It's given me a moment to really reevaluate and assess what I want in life and where I want to be and why I want to be there. I started going through one of my old notebooks from when I first started backpacking across the world 3 years ago. And I found a note that I wrote to myself about how safe I feel here in France, and I don't want to forget that. And I thought it was funny because I wrote the note to future me, I think somehow subconsciously knowing that I was going to feel insecure or scared or wonder later on. And I used to do that a lot as well when I was dating pretty casually in my 20s of if I would go on a first date with a guy, I would leave myself a voice note when I got back to my car or I got back home saying, this is how you felt, Jen. Don't gaslight yourself into thinking anything else later. Don't believe anything or fabricate anything, whether it was good or bad. Like, he was a gentleman and he was really great to be around and you felt really safe in your body, or he was actually not that great, but he was super cute and he did this, but he didn't do this. It's just, I think, important to take advice and take mental notes of things that you feel in the moment. And it's easy later on to talk yourself into or out of something. And I wish there was a roadmap that someone had written uniquely for you to follow to figure out the best way to live your life, but it doesn't exist. And I think even if it did, it would be super boring. But I was talking with a friend last night about how my boyfriend and I have been watching nature documentaries before we go to sleep. And something that I found really interesting is that so many of the baby animals and the male animals follow the mother or the females of the pack. Lions, seals, elephants, all of these animals that are in the wild look to the female as a leader. And I think we're at a really interesting time in history where women get to rewrite their narrative or start from the beginning. I have done so much generational work when it comes to understanding the women in my family and their stories and the reason why they chose decisions that they did or why they didn't. And I feel like a lot of us come from more bravery than we think and more creativity and freedom and innovation than we think. And being a 29-year-old American girl who decided to move across the world and start a new life for herself without a spouse or a job or a school, I think that so much of that has to be thanked towards the women in my life and the women who have paved the way that allow me to get to make my own money and make my own decisions. And I think that the world is starting to catch up on that a little bit, which makes me proud to be a woman in 2025. And I don't know where life is going from here, and I think that's okay. But if you feel like you're far behind or it's too late to make a change in your life, first of all, change doesn't guarantee happiness. But second of all, taking that risk is the reward, not the risk itself and what you want to get out of it. My life is so much more interesting and full than I ever thought it would be, but it doesn't mean that it's better than someone who decided to stay where they live. And a lot of people ask me about that. Like, how did you do what you did? And isn't it crazy? And I could never do something like that. And my response is always, well, what you're doing is just as hard or just as crazy, whether you choose to stay exactly where you grew up or move across the state or across the country or decide to do something different than what your parents did or do the exact same thing that what your parents did. There's always hard. You just choose your hard. And sometimes one type of hard can be a little bit more difficult on your nervous system than other kinds of hard, but it's more about finding a home within yourself and the approval and stability and groundedness within yourself. I personally have not been as confident as I am in my own abilities and my character and my talents and my heart as I am today, even though I'm not the most financially successful or physically in shape or have the most friends or the most accolades or the most whatever. I'm really proud of my character. And I think that that's the only real measurement of success that any woman should have. So I think that bravery is a choice, and you get to choose if you want to make yourself proud, and you get to choose if you want to be your own closest friend and your own biggest cheerleader, and then people around you are the ones who support that. So if you find yourself in a position that you don't want to be in, or you do want a big change or an adjustment in your life, I think it always starts within. And I should be taking my own advice, because I have been quite tired lately and not taking the best care of myself with my sleep or with my work schedule. And I think sometimes there's seasons for that, but right now I'm at a intersection of my life which are always my favorite and always prove to be the most fruitful afterwards. But I'm super grateful to have the internet, even though I hate it most days, to share with you and talk about things that I think are important and hopefully can bring some sort of conversation or epiphany or argument in your head. Because if there's anything that I've learned in France, is that arguing is still a valid form of communication, even if you disagree. And that's all that I have to say today, except for I love you. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, subscribe to whatever streaming platform that you are listening to this on. Shoot me a message on socials at Jenny Johnson with some topics that maybe we should discuss about France or moving or going into your 30s or womanhood or the things that you like to talk about or have questions about, because I care about what you think. I love you. There's time number 2. And I'll see you soon.